My name is Will McClendon. I'm a senior consultant at Hitachi Solutions. I've been in this space for a few years now, and this session is going to be about universal resource scheduling at scale, right? URS. We see it thrown about all over the place. So I decided to do a session about my findings and, you know, how to build a great enterprise solution. In this demo, in this presentation, we're going to talk about the differences between URS versus like field service or PSA, what my particular customer journey was, some of the things the employees like, they didn't like, personal learnings. I always think caring is sharing, so it's always good to talk about what I found. Also, um, we're going to talk about URS from a very high level. So we're not going to hit on every what if scenario, but there is time for Q&A. So feel free to ask me some questions afterwards. And again, of course, we're also going to have a demo at the end, demoing synchronization using tools like Dynamics app for Outlook, uh, the new activities to bookings for our calendar controls, and also the change notifications via Graph API. So moving right along. So what is URS? What is Universal Resource Scheduling, right? Well, really, it's the scheduling engine for Dynamics 365. We see it tied together with everything from field service, PSA, um, but really it's the scheduling engine that D365 uses to take your requirements from one application and match it up with whatever your customer's needs are. Um, Again, we see it with customer service, we see it with field service, and we see it with PSA. Oftentimes it gets confused as if it's not its own individual solution. So why would we ever want to use URS? Why? Well, the beauty of URS is it allows an organization to really take its resources. Now, those resources can be people, it can be equipment, it can be a building, a room in a building, whatever those resources we value, and we can fill their availabilities, optimize them with whatever skills they may have, and it helps us to fill in the spaces that our customers need. So if a customer makes a request, we're able to say, hey, we have a resource A that can help you get to that request. So really, that's why we want to use URS. URS is its own application. So you can literally schedule anything. And we see scheduling is so important nowadays, especially with the pandemic. Although we're winding down, initially it brought to light the need for people to schedule appointments. It's always been there, but I think in the last few years, this really came to the fore. So you're saying to me, we can already do that. Why not use just regular activities? Well, activities is a bit different than scheduling, okay? Activities are nice. They do give us an idea of what we need to do. But with resource scheduling, there's so much more capabilities. We're able to track a client's requests in greater detail using URS or resource scheduling more than what we would be able to do for activities. Also, we have roles such as dispatchers and managers who are able to see activity, who are able to see schedules at a greater scale, and they're able to really optimize. You can't optimize activities, but you can optimize scheduling so that the customer experience is a lot better. So do you need the whole, like, do you need PSA or field service in order to get scheduling? No, not at all. Scheduling has an overarching lap, right? It's used with field service, it's used with PSA, but you can literally use it, as I said before, to schedule anything. It's its own baby. So if you, for example, have, again, we have the need for frontline workers. We see that we can use with field service, but let's say we have a custom entity that we want to make schedulable. Well, you have that ability or that feature with URS, and you can use the schedule board and your company's resources to match them up, and everyone's happy. So let's focus a little bit on the customer journey, right? And we've seen this a lot in the last 18 months or so since the pandemic started. Really, customers want to capture leads from a website, right? And they want organizations want to capture leads from a website. They want to basically be able to know what the client wants. They want to capture that information because we know the value of lead generation is huge, right? The customer, however, from their perspective, all they want to know is who can help me fix, who can help me. They want to know who can help me, when they can help me, and how far are they. This interaction between the customer and organization is a beautiful interaction because it leads to greater leads, higher revenues, increased numbers of appointments, and also customer satisfaction shoots up through the roof. So in our use case, we had a very similar situation. It was a large American retailer. They had roughly 3,000 field technicians across the country. The turnaround time was 2 months, and they had that similar scenario where they wanted before the self-servicing scheduler was deployed. It was something very similar to that effect, where it was a portal. They wanted a scheduler. The customer wanted to know who, what, when their soul would be there, and also we wanted to capture those leads. Some of the challenges we had were trying to get the bookings for Outlook synchronized, and also um, keeping the technicians' calendars all in sync. So that was our project, and I said in 2 months we had a turnaround time. So what did we do? Did we just jump right in? No. And I encourage you to follow these steps because before you just say, hey, I can schedule anything and go into it, you want to stop, breathe, and give yourself a break. Look at the organization from a functional perspective, and take a look at it. See how their territories are lined out. Look at their resources, and then let's come back to the technical space. Those resource requirements are what the customer needs and what we need to fulfill. And then look at the infrastructure, like the technicians, where they are, what kind of ability, is it mobile? These are the things you want to consider before you just start scheduling anything. And let's look at it at a deeper schedule, a deeper level. Let's look right into territories. So territories, love territories. I'm probably the weirdest person on the planet, but I love order and organization. Makes me happy. We know that an effective territory structure can make a team so much more productive. It helps increase customer coverage, overall sales, reduce costs. It's all pluses for an organized territory structure. In D365, we have a territory entity. It's self-referential, so it allows you to build off your own hierarchy. I highly recommend take the time to make sure your resources are assigned to the right territories and you have a good view of the territory structure. For example, here in the United States, we had states, and then we have counties, and then we have cities, and then we have zip codes. Make your structure something that's logical and that you're able to read. If not, then the application isn't going to know who goes where and how they get there or what. Sometimes too, I've seen cases where folks will build the functionality that comes out of the box from the territory structure, from the territory entity. They rebuild it. You kind of want to stay away from that. You want to stick with out of the box as much as possible, because if the client in the future says, hey, I want to use something like Resource Schedule Optimizer, RSO, they're not going to be able to do it with a custom territory structure or a custom territory entity. You want to stick without the box as much as possible when it comes to territory structures. Now, moving right along on that ladder, we have resource considerations. Now, what are those? That's basically saying when your resources, the people, the equipment, the facility, whatever it may be, when they're available, what are their work hours? When can they start? What are they good at? We have resources that are not all good at everything, right? If they are certified, how well or how high did they certify? What are their actual roles? These are the considerations for our resources that you need to stop and consider and build on the back end. Um, you, because these tie directly into our resource requirements. Now, the resource requirements is the glue that holds everything together. So we have our territories, right? We need to know what kind of person we want. All that goes into the resource requirement. This is where it tells URS, hey, I know what I want. I know what kind of person I want. I know where I want them. Now it's time for somebody to find me a resource that fits this criteria. So take the time to have that built out. Resource requirements are beautiful because they're simply the glue that holds everything together. So if you had a custom entity that you decide to be schedulable, you'll notice that when you hit that little book button at the top, or when you want to schedule it, those requirements notify the system and help the operators identify who needs to go where. So you want to have that as much information as possible because it's skilled resource matching. That's the way I describe it. Skilled resource matching. All right. If you remember anything, that's the one thing you want to remember. Skilled resource matching. All right. Now, customer notifications. Can you imagine booking something and then not getting any information or any details about it? Well, that's what it was like for us 20 years ago when we would make appointments. They would simply tell us, hey, here's your promised time, and that's all you get. You hang up the phone and you hope that the cable man would show up. Well, in today's world, with all the technology that we have, we need customers to be in line with our resources. So you want to look at incorporating email, text notifications. You want your sales members to receive notifications. You want your technicians to receive notifications. If the customer decides to change the appointment, sometimes things come up. We want everyone to be in unison. And with that in mind, that helps us with that. And when that's the case, we also want to keep CRM as our system of record, or D365 as a system of record, because trying to keep all those pieces in synchronization is just too much. It's not really built to scale. We want to have a good foundation, and that's D365, and let that be our system of record for any interactions that come with the customer and our technicians. All right, so we hit the territories, resources, resource requirement, customer notifications. So how do we get those bookings that we made in D365 into O365, or people's calendars, technicians' calendars? Well, we have several things. We're going to talk about them. We had time off requests. We had personal appointments that you can make in Microsoft. You have activities now that you can make, and you also have things like Power Automate that help get information from CRM into Outlook. But before you build your solution, you want to consider things such as performance. Performance is generally the most important thing because we all want results and we want them fast. So with that in mind, you want to make sure performance is key. We want to make sure that whatever solution we have is manageable. For example, in this case, there were 2,000 technicians. You want something that you can manage for all 2,000 technicians. That won't necessarily require a full-time resource to be staffed for, just managing communication between those resources. So let's consider some of the options. All right, time off requests. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. The ease of management. Basically, they come to, it's an entity in D365, especially URS, and a technician will simply say, hey, I'm off from 9:30 to 10:30. And you set up a structure to allow them to approve it. If it needs to be approved, their manager can approve it. It's simple, it's out of the box, it's easy to deploy. The problem is it's not really syncing with their Outlook calendars. So you have to train your resources or your technicians to get used to looking at D365 as opposed to looking at their phones or their Outlook calendars for those kinds of communications. And you know, that has its pros and that has its cons. But if you're looking for something that's fast and quick to deploy, you can take your time and take the time to look at time off requests. All right, Riva. Riva is a SaaS solution, and I absolutely love this product. I can't say enough about it, enough good things about it. It's just those guys over there, they know what they're doing. Excellent product, right? It's super simple. It gets you that bi-directional sync. Data coming from CRM and data going from Outlook synchronized together. So you get bi-directional sync. User adoption is super easy because you don't need to, they don't need to install anything. And I hate saying this part, but I had to ding them on something, and I was being really, really, really picky about this. The only disadvantage is the cost. Now, let me be fair and honest. The cost is multiplied by your how many technicians you have. But the folks at Riva, let me say this with a footnote. The folks at Riva will work with you. They give you fair pricing, and it is well worth the investment with going with that product. But I couldn't have no disadvantages. So, but that sticker shock may come as a surprise to some customers. But again, Riva will work with you. They're very fair. The pricing they gave us, I thought, was completely justified. The client wasn't looking for that any additional overhead, and that's the only reason why we didn't go with them. Okay, so the Dynamics 365 app for Outlook. Love it because it's free. It gives you that granular tracking, and it syncs data from D365 or from Outlook into D365, right? The only problem with that, and as you'll see in our demo, is you have to get users used to clicking tracked. That can be a bit hard. Sometimes your technicians, if they have those emergency situations like having to pick up the kids, they don't necessarily have time to put that in their Outlook calendar and hit tracked. That happens all the time. So the user adoption and the user journey can be a bit much with D365 app for Outlook, but all in all, you already have the structure, you already have the infrastructure. It's definitely worth the investment, especially as the scheduler is being built up more and more. It's definitely worth the investment. Now, Power Automate. I want to pause here for a second. The reason why we looked at Power Automate is because all the apps I showed you when we're talking about the D360 app for Outlook and time off requests, they help you get data into CRM. Apps like Riva, and they help take data from your Outlook into CRM and from CRM to your Outlook, allowing that full bi-directional sync. It's really hard with these other apps like D365 app for Outlook. You're going to have to use something like Power Automate along with it because D365 app for Outlook is good for getting data from Outlook into CRM, but it doesn't necessarily get data from CRM into your Outlook. So to bridge that gap, we have to look at Power Automate. Power Automate, though, if you just want to use it by itself and take the other applications out, has the ability to give you bi-directional sync, fill in the gap on both ends. And it can do that by change tracking. Change tracking is like backups, if you will. Remember, if you ever had a system admin job, we would do backups, and then we had to do differential backups or incremental backups. Change tracking gives you some of the same features. The only part of that is that the management piece is very, 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 very difficult. The development time to come up with calculations to compare, and the implementation time. That can be a bit much when looking at Power Automate using change tracking. Now, change notifications, on the other hand, man, that's easy. Change notifications allows you to have access to people's calendars on a larger scale. It's cheap because it's kind of free. The latency is pretty quick. It's a bit chatty. Ease of integration. You're going to have to build some back-end pieces. And what I mean by that is You're going to have a user table. You're going to want to track the subscriptions because you're basically going to Exchange and saying, hey, I want to track this person's calendar. They say, cool, here's their subscription information, and here's your timer. So you have to track when that subscription is going to expire. And what you see is what you get. So whatever properties they send you, there is no, hey, can I get more? They literally say, here's what you get. Work with it as much as you can. But change notifications is greater for scale. It's easier to manage. And once it's up, it's up. All right, I did enough talking. So let's go right into our demo. We're going to demo bidirectional sync, and we're going to use these applications that I mentioned earlier. Now, we're going to use the D365 app for Outlook. We're going to use appointments. Remember, appointments to bookings is a new feature with scheduling. So we're going to look at that, and we're also going to look at change notifications. Now, we're going to see how we can get data from Outlook into D365, and we're also going to see how to get data from D365 into Outlook. I can tell you now, getting data from D365 into Outlook is going to be done by Power Automate. And if you have questions about the Power Automate, I wasn't planning on showing the Power Automate, but if you have questions about it, I have no problem telling you anything you need to know. So moving right on to our demo, we're going to demo how to get data from D365 into our calendars, and from our calendars into D365, accomplishing true bidirectional sync. Let me pull my board up. All right, so this is the brand new schedule board experience. And what we want to see here is when I take this work order, we're going to book it for William McClendon. And what you should see, in a couple of minutes, because it takes a few moments for the Power Automate to fire off, do the calculations, and send them out to whoever it needs to go to. And you should see in my calendar the appointment book and show up. Now it takes 2 minutes, so while we're waiting for that to show up, let's look at how to get data from the calendar into D365 using the D365 app for Outlook. We're going to make an appointment for 2, and if you just saw it in the right-hand corner, we see that the Power Automate fired up and it brought it in there. We'll take a look at it later, but just didn't want to give you too much of a distraction. Let's make an appointment for 1 o'clock this afternoon. Let's go to 2 o'clock. We're gonna meet with the client on Saturday. Who doesn't love that? And let's invite some friends. Go to M. Bison. I guess he doesn't want to hang with me today. There we go. And we tell him, bring the coffee, right? Now, this is the piece for the D365 app for Outlook that users can find a bit much. They have to be sure to do this. Click the application here, and you have to make sure that it's tracked within Dynamics. From here, you don't necessarily need to have anything in regards to. You can, but you don't need it. Once you see that it's been tracked successfully, you simply click Send. And pretty soon, bam, really quick. And you see, I didn't do anything with Bison with M. Bison's calendar, but what you see immediately is that the appointment is already made. There is a different color code for the key here saying that he's unavailable and I'm unavailable at this time from an operator's perspective because we have to meet with the client, and it was able to make these activities, this appointment from the activities. Going back to our calendar, we're able to also see the booking that we previously made showed up in my calendar right where it needed to be. The time zones are a bit off, but we get the point. The same scope as far as the same duration as far as an hour time. With the booking ID listed as well. So with this combination, you're able to get some sort of bidirectional syncing. Now, I want to stop and I want to take a look at appointments to bookings. Now, this is all done from the activities piece. This is all done from the activities piece. And as the schedule API becomes more developed and more refined, you're going to see more features available. So here we can say, let's do happy hour with friends. Let's do happy hour with friends, and let's not do an early morning happy hour. That's not really happy hour here in the States. Let's make it 3 o'clock. Let's have fun. All right. And let's only make it an hour. It's a quick happy hour, right? We hit save. Now, if I go to the activities and I make an appointment, I'm here telling the operator that I'm not available during this time because I have other things going on. So when the operator comes at the schedule board, and let's give it a quick refresh. Yeah. When the operator looks on the schedule board to book jobs or requirements for me, they see that I'm unavailable for these times. So that's not going to necessarily work for the operator. They need to know. They know now that a 4-hour work order isn't going to fit within my schedule, especially for the afternoons. So that's appointments to bookings. Now I want to pause here. These offerings from the D365 app for Outlook and appointments to bookings, these are automatically free with URS. These are included, and the Power Automate to get data from field service into your calendar. That's also additional charge, but it's not too much. Let's demo something now called change notifications. This will help get data from Outlook. It's another service. It'll help get data from Outlook into Dynamics 365. So for that, I need to move to the old schedule board experience. So let's give it a second here. All right. You'll notice that the appointments and are not visible on with this schedule board experience. That's because the new schedule board experience is using a set of APIs to make that. So if you're going to offer this to your clients, make sure you understand the differences between the new experience and the older experience and what's available and what's not available. Feel free to reach out to me. I'll send you a cheat sheet in the Microsoft Docs for it. So let's go ahead and turn on synchronization for William McClendon. All right. So we have Outlook synchronization going for William McClendon. We want to make sure that our appointments are here. So let's make an appointment. Let's make something that's going to stand out. Let's make one for 5 to 6. Although my working hours aren't ever 5 to 6, we want something that's definitely going to stand out just so we can see it separated from the field. It may give you guys a better. Actually, here, let's do this. Those appointments aren't there, so let's make it more profound. Here we go. Okay. Now, see, I didn't have to track anything. I didn't have to click anything extra. And if we come over here to our schedule board, bam, we see that my appointment or unblocked for this time. So now the operator can come and they say he could fit a 4-hour appointment, although it'd be very crude of them to do that. Using this experience, he could fit a 4-hour appointment between here and here, and we can add those requirements. So what I learned is configure first with URS. It's easier to configure than it is to build all these customizations. Keep your budget in mind. Keep those things in mind, as well as territory structures, resource requirements, and take time to talk to the security team. They generally don't like how change notifications work and the requirements that come with Graph API. They're not big fans of it, but just set some time aside, have that conversation, and have a cool head. Me personally, I learned that Microsoft has a ton of offerings available that you can use that can come out of the box, and they're continuing to grow and they're continuing to develop them. So stay tuned. Always keep up to date on the documentation. There's so much more coming out. And that's the end of my demo. Any questions?
Thank you, William. So, William, you've gone into quite a lot of detail there with regards to the integration options for Office 365. Davey is asking a question here. His question is it possible to install and use URS on its own without installing field service?
Oh my goodness, yes. I'm sorry if I didn't call that out, Davey. It's its own application, and it's really used to schedule anything. So I'm going to use the lead entity, for example. Let's say in the POC or proof of concept they released about a year and a half ago, you couldn't really book leads. So what we did is you can go to the lead entity in the system preferences, and you can literally schedule. You select your entity, and you allow it to schedule, and you're good to go. I'm trying to get it up here for you. Yeah. So it's as simple as going to enable resource scheduling for entities, and you go through the process here, and you're good to go. You'll see that the lead entity is usually already in play, but you select your custom entities from this list, you set up your relationships and the requirements, and you click publish, and you're good to go. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you, Will. So the next question is, no, just lots of thank yous here, I guess. Yeah, lots of thank yous from Namisha, from Vicky, from Sabir saying thank you for a great session. There is a question by Lisa asking, thank you, William. Can you use Flow to schedule to Outlook instead of where you have used CE in another tenant and out? Let me read that out again.
Yeah, sorry.
Can you use Flow to schedule to Outlook instead where you have CE in one tenant and Outlook in another?
Okay, I see what you're asking. So you're asking if you have different tenants, can you push those events to different tenants, right? Is that what you're asking me, Lisa?
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a trick to this. The short answer is yes. Do I recommend it? No, because that is incredibly confusing. So what you're doing is when you go through the process of setting up your change notifications, you're going to have you're going to use Graph APIs. So as long as you have security to that Outlook calendar or to those events, you can push whatever you want to that person's calendar. So when going back and forth, you want to make sure that you have the right permissions to do that. Now, going from Outlook to CE, you're definitely if you're going to use D365 app for Outlook, you need to have the right permissions on that level as well. But going from CE to Outlook, as long as you have the permissions, or as long as your API has your app ID has the right permissions assigned to it, you can push it to whoever's tenant you want within Exchange. Did that answer the question? You see how it can become really confusing if you do it vice versa?
Yeah. Yeah, so Lisa says thank you for that.
Good.
So Ali's saying, good presentation, good to know. Some limitations on URS and the old experience versus the new.
I'll stay tuned on LinkedIn. I'll post it. There's some real gotchas with an old versus new, not in a negative way, but if you're used to doing things like building Power Automates off of the old schedule board experiences, some things such as booking methods are a bit different. It has its own set of magic, as I like to say. But definitely, they're building out the new experience, and they're going to add more features to it as well. And I think in the coming wave. So looking forward to it, definitely.
On that note, William, are you able to share your contact details so that the community can keep in touch with you?
Absolutely, and shame on me for not doing that. 1 second, I'll publish it in here.
We can't see your screen right now, you see, William. We can just see yourself.
I'm trying to smile here. I'm sending out my LinkedIn information. And if you need, I put it in the chat. If
Got you.
you feel free to message me on LinkedIn or shoot me an email anytime if you have questions.
Fantastic. Okay. So if there are no other questions for Will.
Thanks, guys, for having me. Great time.
Thank you once again, Will. And thanks for joining us all the way across the pond.
Thanks for having me, man. Bye.
So that was William, who spends a lot of time on this vertical, field services and automation, automated scheduling using URS. So it was great to have him to cover those topics. I know that one of a good pair of mine, Antti Bayunen, he also spends a lot of time covering URS, and he had the exact same challenge that Will was talking about today. And I know that only recently, he was trying to overcome this challenge. Find a more elegant way of integrating the appointments from Office 365. So yeah, there are different various ways. And
Raz,
William,
I reached out to Auntie. In full transparency to everyone, I reached out to Auntie in the past, and him and I collaborated. And I'll tell you what, we butted our heads on the table many times. But if you need things such as that Power Automate that to get you from D365 to Outlook, feel free to reach out to him. He provided it, and he has great articles, an excellent resource. So.
Definitely, William. Definitely, yes. No, thanks for mentioning that. Yes, but yeah. So it's great to see that it's the community that are doing this, right? It's people like yourself, William, like Auntie, and other people coming together to try and solve these problems and share them out with the community, so that you don't have to, have those same pains that everyone else has to go through. So it's great to see that level of collaboration, and it's inspiring, if anything, and that's what we're trying to encourage here. Exactly what you and Auntie achieved. We just want to make sure that gets carried on. So thanks once again to you, William, and to Auntie, and to everyone who collaborates to share their solutions. Fantastic. Okay, so now that we've got some time, that's worked out very well for us, because Neil Parkhurst has shared one of the topics that I know that there's some interest on. It is a new feature, so I'll be sharing it now. Neil actually was unavailable to attend today, but he has shared a video for us to share, and we do have 30 minutes to play it before the next session, so it's all worked out perfectly well. Thanks to William for accommodating us there. So we will be able to do that. So I'll do that right now. So we're going to showcase one of the new features that's replacing Unified Service. Well, I shouldn't use the term replacing, but it's an alternative to the Unified Service Desk. And so let me, and essentially it's the customer service workspace, right? So I know you had some questions on that. Some of the people attending had some questions about that. So without further ado, let me share that. Let me share that with you all. So he shared the link to the video. So let's play that for you all right now.
easy to customer service workspace give us the ultimate flexibility that we get with Dynamics for a while. You know, we've got multiple interfaces or apps for customer service scenarios, and I've kind of going to try and look at two things here. The cake side really is tongue-in-cheek. That's me sort of saying, well, can customer service workspace give us the ultimate flexibility that we get with some of the interfaces, but still have something that's really easy to use and really easy to implement? So can we have our cake and eat it? And the crystal ball thing is looking forward. How do